This video is going to be talking about ending A of Fear and Hunger 2 Termina and several endings of Fear and Hunger 1. If you haven't seen ending A yourself, you'll be missing context and will have any surprise spoiled, so you should experience the ending yourself in some form before watching this. So ending A sees the creation of Logic, the machine god, however the details of what that actually means and how it works are obscure. I'll start with the simple part. In order to reach ending A, you must activate 3 teleelectroscopes throughout the tunnels underneath Prehevel. These teleelectroscopes are part of a large network underneath the city that is necessary for Logic to operate. Once those 3 are activated, you enter the White Bunker underneath the museum and fight elite Bremen soldiers, the Sylvian Trooper, the Platoon, and Kaiser himself in order to reach Logic. You then fight Logic before joining it. I'll just play the scene where you become part of Logic. So the most direct explanation of logic available comes from the document Teleelectroscope and Logic, found in the bunker. Teleelectroscope, an interconnected computerized system which documents our lives and extracts information from our consciousness. The data is abstracted from banks of every person in the whole human system. Logic works as the center of Teleelectroscope, a core in this world where all of our knowledge and inspiration come from and go to, a data tank which possesses all knowledge and it provides people with said information as they need it. The future of Teleelectroscope. People become obsessed with these fake friends who exist in the walls. Ultimately, people will begin to shun personal contact, preferring to interact with each other via machine technology. People will rather stay in the world created by our shared consciousness. The logic is designed so that each individual human in the system will affect the surrounding world, thus creating a shared paradise. A shared consensus. It's kind of like a fantasy version of the internet, except some people are actually contained within it, and in particular there's one person at the center of it, Reila Haas. Putting together a full timeline of events for Reila Haas and the creation of Logic was difficult since it's scattered across so many documents, some of which are secret, and honestly even the correct answer doesn't make sense in some ways, but I've managed to make one. So to start, the game takes place in 1942. Sometime before 1937, the Logic project was started. In 1937, the Second Great War between the Bremen Empire and the Eastern Union begins. We know this because Levi, currently 18, was drafted at the age of 13 as soon as the war started. Still in 1937, Olivia and Reila Haas start university at the age of 15. A little bit strange as Olivia's loss of strength in her legs was said to be during her high school years, so I guess that means they were both like 3 years ahead and her issues could have started as young as 11. Early on, Reila met with a professor who was a member of the Nameless Liberty Underground, NLU, who recruited her. Olivia interpreted this as a romantic relationship, which is very troubling since the timeline means they were between 15 and 17 years old at the time, but we can hope it was solely meeting for the NLU and Olivia was entirely mistaken. The NLU is a only loosely organized group that generally opposes tyrannical governments and wars. During the time of the game, their main goal is to stop the Second Great War, mostly through sabotaging the Bremen Empire, but also trying to sabotage Rondon's nuclear bomb project. In addition to her connections to the NLU, Reila also takes part in a special student exchange program between the Bremen Empire and the Eastern Union, while the two countries are at war. During this exchange program, she briefly meets Kaiser, who she thinks is one of the main forces behind the creation of Project Logic. While working on the project, she manages to become head engineer, while still in university, even. There must have presumably been a previous lead engineer and the project was started years before her arrival there. Along with working on logic, she's also giving information to the NLU, who are interested in stopping the project. However, we can see that Reila is very invested in its completion, so she probably convinced other NLU members it should keep going. In 1942, as the war starts to come to a close, the Eastern Union is fine with letting the Bremen Empire take Prehevel for an end to the war. Reila tries desperately to convince them that the logic project underneath the city is too valuable to give up, but doesn't succeed. Soon after, Reila Haas is captured by the Bremen Empire and accused of treason for her role in the NLU. While she's in prison, the Eastern Union officially cancels the logic project and collapses many of the tunnels that were being used to work on it, sealing it all off. She's imprisoned for about 6 months before the Prehevel branch of the NLU breaks her out of prison and goes back to Prehevel to try to activate logic themselves before Kaiser is able to. But the traces of Rher see that humans are trying to ascend to godhood again, and begin the Termina festival in Prehevel to stop it from happening. So the NLU are only able to get into the central logic machine, and aren't able to activate the teleelectroscopes spread across the city. Then the Bremen army arrives with Kaiser trying to activate logic, but is also stopped by the Termina festival. So within a week after the Bremen army arriving, a train carrying 14 people arrives in Prehevel. Even with the teleelectroscopes off, Logic is still able to project this image of Reila in an attempt to guide those on the train, including her twin sister, to turn the teleelectroscopes on. One common misconception of events is that the NLU is behind the creation of Logic. The only known connection is that Reila, the lead engineer, is a member of the NLU. However, the project began years before she started working on it, and the main force behind the project being initiated was Kaiser. Though the last remaining question that I've still never been able to answer is, why is Kaiser organizing this project in the Eastern Union when he's the leader of the Bremen Empire? He could just do it in his own country. I don't have an answer to this. It's possible there's something of importance in Prehevel, but I haven't seen any theories about that I don't have good evidence against. Anyway, that information is all available enough if you seek it out. It's difficult to put together, but it's not something nobody's done before. The reason I made this video is to explain something else that I think is even less commonly understood. How is logic a god? It's the machine god. The little panels on the menus in Termina say birth of a god. What does it mean? The explanation is hard to find, so I've seen a lot of people just assume it's similar to the god of fear and hunger we see become a god in the first game. This child that was the daughter of a new god was able to enter the dead body of the god of the depths and absorb its power, becoming an ascended god. The thing is, there's no evidence for logic being the same. Well, there's one thing, but I'll get to it. Again, I think it's mostly just an assumption made by people because the actual answer is too hidden. The old god that they suggest logic is replacing is either Rher or Vinushka. In the case of Rher, it is true that Rher is present at Prehevel, but well, Rher isn't really dead in the same way. The idea of a god dying in fear and hunger is complicated, but Rher's up there, doing its thing. Rher's in the same state the god of the depths was at the start of the first game. The main traces, the body of the god of the depths, is still there, corrupting everything around it, controlling the layout of the dungeon, guarding Mahab, still alive, just not in the full form of an old god, since none of the old gods are still around in their full form anymore. And Rher's the same. The traces of Rher's old body, is up there, still alive and doing things. It's just not the full old god. And unlike the girl entering the god of the depths, logic is actually hidden away from Rher underground. How is logic supposed to be taking Rher's power from down there? So the other option is Vinushka, and there are two main reasons for this. First, in Father Hugo's house, there's an unedited skin Bible of Vinushka. The short version you can normally get was heavily edited by the Vatican. In the original version, written by Enki, he says that humanity's greed and hostility towards the land killed Vinushka. It even makes sense that with the death of nature, it would be replaced by the creation of a machine god. Then the second piece of evidence, and this one does vex me. On Logic's chest is a cube with 2 sigils of Vinushka on it. The main point against this theory, however, is again a lack of evidence that Vinushka's dead body is anywhere near Prehevel. The most we have is the Icky Terso out in the forest. The Icky Terso is waiting for Vinushka to return. Vinushka is not returned, so it continues to wait. The Icky Terso may be mentioned in the Skin Bible as faint traces of Vinushka lingering in totems that desperately search for the murdered god. Still, it's not that direct. That isn't Vinushka. It's a large creature waiting for Vinushka, or like a piece of Vinushka, and the new gods say they can be found all over Europa. Where's Vinushka himself? There's this weird cult out in the forest. They're probably Vinushka cultists. Is this Vinushka in this hole? No, it seems that hole is empty. In the first game, you enter the mouth of the god of the depths. I'm not seeing anything like that. Now about the cube. If you look at the table in the workshop in Rher's realm, you'll see they're described as, the table is full of cubes with various sigils carved all around them. The cubes are hollow though. They seem to be missing some parts still. Which would suggest that the Vinushka sigils on Logic's chest are just 2 of many sigils on there. Now it is very strange that Mir decided to only show the 2 Vinushka sigils and not have like Vinushka and Grogoroth and Sylvian, any combination of 2 gods and not just Vinushka twice. But that's what I'm going with. But there's also an issue with the idea as a whole, since the girl in the first game was able to absorb the power of the god of the depths because of her unique soul. There's nobody like that involved here. Reila was a regular old radiating soul. Neither parent was a new god. I've heard there are people that say Kaiser was her father, but no, that's ridiculous, unsupported by any evidence, and actively contradicted by Olivia having a regular shadowed soul that you can obtain, and not the ancient one soul like the girl had. Now, it is a complicated machine, so it's possible the machine could have some method of absorbing an old god's power, but if we read about Logic, or listen to Kaiser talk about it, that doesn't come up at all. It's all about converting brain signals to digital ones and making a collective consciousness. There's no mention of an old god. The most you get is the term artificial green hue, but that's in the name, it's artificial. So now finally to my main point of the video. How does Logic work? I'll start with some general words from Lagarde about it that you can see in the regular ending A. Since the dawn of man, we have strived for a power that would rival the very gods we worshipped. There has always been kings and sultans who pursued that strength to no ends. Even I fell into that trap at one point in time. It is but a never-ending cycle that only feeds itself but leads to nowhere. If we chase that power, we are always looking at the big picture from behind. We cannot see the forest for the trees. Instead, we needed to birth something new. That time has finally come. The true unity of mankind is before us. A true God born from humanity, not from the old world. A god that is not born from the powers borrowed, but from her own strength. This is the moment in time our whole existence has strived for. We crafted that fate ourselves, with our own hands. Now as a joint conscious, we ascend. Now that was all in pretty general terms, but there's a few important messages. First is that this is completely distinct from the new gods, of course, but he also says it's separate from the old gods, not power borrowed from them, but made by humanity. This goes strongly against the idea of this being another god ascended by absorbing the power of an old one. And the last line, now as a joint conscious we ascend. This line is a very important one, though it isn't exactly explained here. This joint consciousness is what makes Logic ascend and become the machine god. The true explanation of it is reserved for if you reach the scene while playing as Osa. The burnt-up head of Nasra will tell you that this is the reason you're here. He'll start insulting Lagarde, who will eventually hear him, and they'll talk directly to each other. Lagarde's dialogue continues to be vague. I embraced the chaos and saw where it led me. The endless cycles of mankind's struggle for power had to lead somewhere. I twisted the cycles into a spiral. Each cycle pushed us further and further from the grasp of the old world, closer to our true potential. We're now at the climax of that spiral as we speak. We cannot control the world laid down by primal forces, but we can build a new one. The singularity, our promised land, awaits. But then Nasra will somehow perfectly understand what Lagarde is saying and explain Logic for us. I have to hand it to you, it's a clever ploy. You found a way and created a universal concept shared by all of mankind. If I didn't detest every fiber of your being, I might even wait and see where all this leads. He created a universal concept shared by all of mankind. That might not mean much to you immediately, but it's referring to something very important. If you enter the body of the god of the depths without bringing the girl with you, then at the deepest part of the dungeons, the only thing waiting for you will be the traces of Grogoroth. If you manage to hold them off in a fight, it will talk to you and reveal the reason why the old gods have abandoned humanity. The older gods, they do not exist in this world anymore. The older gods are too pure for this world. They are the true forms of the feelings and ideas that linger in men. But humans, they're too tainted by their own mind and ambition to understand purity. Think of the perfect shape of fear and destruction. Now take a look at the world you delve. Do you see that shape? The shape could never exist among men, because the shape varies between every human. If you could truly see the shape everyone shares, it would shatter the individual mind and existence. Humans are weak. I can reveal the true form, glimpses of it. Then whether you agree to see it or not, the true form of destruction is revealed to you and your body shuts down. So the old gods aren't present in the world because they're pure concepts. Rher is the true form of the feelings and ideas that linger in men. The embodiment of every human's combined concept of destruction. I hope you can see the connection to logic. By creating a universal concept shared by all of mankind, logic, a collective consciousness, they're able to create an old god. There's still some room to interpret what exactly that means. Is it just one new concept and one new god, or is it bigger? The ending of telelectroscope and logic kind of suggests this shared consciousness may be able to be used for more. People would rather stay in the world created by our shared consciousness. The logic is designed so that each individual human in the system will affect the surrounding world, thus creating a shared paradise, a shared consensus. I'm not sure if I'm reading things wrong or imagining them, but I get the impression that beyond just being its own shared concept, logic may be able to make everybody in it share the same ideas on things. Anything, effectively allowing it to channel the power of any of the old gods, as those within it can all agree on what destruction is. Rher being the embodiment of every human's combined concept of destruction. Control over the people in logic's idea of destruction would allow effectively control over Rher. We also see logic with a hand of creation and hand of destruction like Rher and Sylvian, and using spells from Vinushka, suggesting likely a connection to all of the old gods, but I'm not sure. Also not entirely related to logic, but a significant conversation that has more exposition on this understanding of the old gods, which comes from Osa, which makes sense because he's a yellow mage, and it's a line of teaching from Nasra. If you talk to him on the train as anybody other than Marina, and ask him if he's a magician, then ask how magic works, he'll say, "That's quite a broad topic. It all comes down to your willpower. Our minds are far stronger than what you'd guess just by looking at your average peasant. There's a greater scheme that we all enact, fate, if you will. You can manipulate that force and bend it to your own will. You need blind, unconditional belief in yourself to achieve this. People rarely possess such traits, though. Even the most megalomaniac dictators in the world have a seed of doubt at the back of their head, gnawing at their self-confidence." That was actually a bad example. Such dictators usually are the least capable of magic, thanks to their fragile ego. But in any case, because of the human weakness, a conduit is often necessary. If we cannot believe in ourselves, maybe we can believe in higher powers. Through worship of the older gods, we can channel our unconditional belief and thus create simple tricks that manipulate the world around us. And if you say in response, "So gods don't really gift us with magic?" I never said that. Who's to say gods aren't manifestations of our unconditional belief as well? Maybe they're just extensions of our mind. So in a sense, the gift of magic would come from them. This is a hotly debated topic among the Grand Priests. These are just theories, of course, so use this information with a grain of salt. We are just miserable humans after all. What do we know?